Many women in midlife notice a subtle but frustrating shift. They're not confused, they're not incapable, they just don't feel as mentally sharp as they used to. Words are harder to find, and focus takes more effort. Multitasking feels heavier than ever. And they're often told that it's simply aging. But research suggests that these changes in verbal learning and memory are not explained by age alone. If this feels familiar, you may be experiencing what's commonly described as perimenopausal brain fog. So, what is actually happening? I'm Dr. Melissa Blake, a naturopathic doctor on the Metagenics medical education team, and today we'll explore why brain fog is so common in midlife, which systems are involved, what you might want to look to evaluate, and evidence-based nutritional strategies that can help support cognitive clarity during this hormonal transition. Cognitive shifts are widely reported during perimenopause, with early research suggesting that at least half of women notice changes in memory, concentration, or everyday recall. And these changes often show up in a few specific areas of thinking. The first is verbal memory. So this is when you're trying to find the right word, but it takes more effort, and it feels like the word's there, but it's just out of reach. We also see changes in processing speed. This is when information still makes sense, but it just takes a little longer to absorb. So you might have to reread emails or pause before responding in a conversation. Our working memory can decline. This is holding information in the moment becomes a little harder. So walking into a room and forgetting why you're there, or losing track of a thought mid-task, it becomes more common. And then attention changes. Focus isn't gone, but it feels more effortful. Mental fatigue shows up faster, and distractions are harder to filter out. So this can feel like the brain isn't working the way it once did. But these changes have a physiological explanation. They are linked to hormonal transitions during menopause, not just aging alone. And that distinction really matters because if we understand the cause, it can help guide meaningful support. Your brain makes up about 2% of your total body weight, but uses over 20% of your energy. It is extremely sensitive to oxygen levels, blood sugar balance, stress, hormonal signaling, sleep quality, and even small changes in any of these can affect clarity, recall, and focus. And perimenopause affects all of them all at the same time. When we think about perimenopause, we tend to think only or mostly about estrogen, and we tend to reduce estrogen to a sex hormone that's responsible for reproduction only. But estrogen is deeply involved in how your brain works every single day. There are estrogen receptors that are highly concentrated in areas of the brain that are responsible for memory, focus, decision-making, and word recall. Areas like the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex. So this means estrogen isn't just influencing your menstrual cycle, it's influencing how clearly you think. Estrogen helps the brain access glucose, which is the primary fuel source. It supports mitochondria, which are the structures inside cells responsible for producing cellular energy known as ATP. It helps regulate neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin, which influence motivation, mood, and mental clarity. It improves blood flow to the brain, and it supports synaptic plasticity. Essentially, this is how well your brain cells communicate and form new connections, which is critical for learning and memory. So it does a lot. And because of all this, estrogen is one of the many reasons women feel mentally sharp through their 20s, 30s, and early 40s. And then during perimenopause, estrogen, it doesn't simply decline, it fluctuates unpredictably, and the brain does not like unpredictability. When estrogen rises and falls inconsistently, the brain has to constantly recalibrate how it fuels itself, how it regulates neurotransmitters, how efficiently neurons communicate. The brain thrives on stability, and fluctuation introduces metabolic variability, which often shows up as brain fog. So far, we've mostly focused on the ovaries, specifically on the impact of estrogen on the brain. But perimenopause isn't just a hormonal transition. It also impacts your nervous system. As estrogen fluctuates, the brain becomes more sensitive to stress, and research shows that these fluctuations in reproductive hormones, including estrogen, influence how we perceive stress and how strongly we respond to it. So this doesn't necessarily mean that cortisol is high or abnormal, but that regulating stress becomes less predictable. So women notice that they feel more reactive. Little things bother them more. They're less resilient. They're slower to recover from challenges that previously felt totally manageable. And at the same time, these hormonal fluctuations can also impact thyroid function, or how efficiently the body converts thyroid hormone into its active form. And thyroid hormones play a direct role in overall metabolism and how efficiently the brain uses and produces energy. So when estrogen fluctuates, stress signaling becomes less predictable, thyroid activity is less efficient, and the whole system feels less stable, and the brain's energy supply can feel less reliable. So the key point here is brain fog is rarely about a single hormone, and perimenopause is rarely about a single hormone. It's usually a reflection of a lack of coordination between the ovaries, the adrenals, and the thyroid systems. They're not communicating as well as they once did. And that's why we want to look at the big picture when we're assessing brain fog. During perimenopause, hormone testing can be surprisingly unhelpful. Hormones are fluctuating day to day, and a single lab value often just reflects a moment in time rather than the overall pattern. There can definitely be value in establishing a baseline, but normal or inconsistent hormone results don't necessarily rule out hormonally driven symptoms. At the same time, not all brain fog is hormonal, so this is a really important point. We don't want to attribute everything to hormones and overlook other factors. So clinically, it's important to evaluate things like iron status and ferritin, since low iron can directly impact oxygen delivery and cognitive function. We want to look at B12, which is essential for neurological health and memory. Thyroid function, as I mentioned, it plays a big role in metabolic and brain energy regulation. Markers of blood sugar stability are really important, such as fasting insulin and glucose variability. Maybe look at sleep quality and possible sleep disorders and how they could be contributing. Medication burden, including subtle cognitive side effects that are common from prescribed medications, and when appropriate, inflammatory markers that can influence fatigue and cognition. Brain fog is often influenced by more than one factor, and identifying even one correctable contributor can make a meaningful difference. As I've already kind of alluded to, another major contributor is stress. Under stress, the brain prioritizes survival over clarity. Focus, recall, cognitive flexibility, they're not important when you're running from a lion. I often see women feel less efficient at multitasking in midlife, but it's rarely because they've lost the ability. It's because they're carrying more cognitive and emotional load than ever before. They have more responsibilities, they're making more decisions, and there's more invisible mental labor. And the brain is trying to manage all of this while hormonal signaling is less predictable than it used to be. So yeah, it makes sense that you might feel like your brain is letting you down, and that things that once felt effortless now require a lot more effort and energy. And that disconnect can be so frustrating and sometimes even a little scary. So if you're feeling frustrated with your brain right now, this is the part of the video that is the most reassuring, because while you can't really stop hormonal change, you can support how your brain fuels itself, regulates stress, and recovers. So rather than looking for one solution, it's more helpful to think about nutrients that support three core things: brain energy production, nervous system regulation, and metabolic stability. So here are a few evidence-supported places to start. The first is with omega-3 fatty acids. Most research on omega-3s and cognitive function focuses on aging populations, and they see that higher intake has been associated with a reduced risk of age-related cognitive decline and overall improvements in certain memory measures. Research specific to menopause is more limited, but there is one randomized controlled trial in postmenopausal women that showed improvements in some memory and psychomotor outcomes compared to placebo. We definitely need more studies in this area. So while omega-3s are not like a targeted treatment for perimenopausal brain fog, we have so much evidence and rationale that they support cognitive function through overall brain health, mood regulation, and inflammatory balance, all of which improve your thinking and memory. So supplementing with omega-3s or consuming additional fish can be a major benefit during midlife for cognitive health. The second option is to consider magnesium. It's often discussed as a sleep nutrient, but research also suggests that magnesium influences neuroinflammation, stress responsiveness, and even communication between brain cells. These are three factors that strongly affect attention, memory, and mental clarity. Magnesium status also appears to decline with age, and it might even be lower specifically in peri- and postmenopausal women. Studies do note that there is an association between lower magnesium levels and thyroid markers, and because we know thyroid influences metabolic rate and brain energy, this relationship may contribute to symptoms like fatigue, reduced concentration, and mental sluggishness. So supporting magnesium intake can help address all of these contributing factors, including sleep, stress, and metabolic insufficiency, as well as factors related to thyroid function. The third thing I want to mention is creatine. It's often associated with exercise performance, and there's some really great research in menopausal women that shows creatine supplementation, especially when it's combined with resistance training, can improve muscle strength and lean mass over time. But creatine also plays an important role in brain health, and this is mostly through its ability to regenerate ATP, the molecule the brain relies on for immediate energy. And there's some really cool emerging research specific to peri- and menopausal women that creatine can boost mood and certain aspects of cognitive function. Again, an area of research that's still developing, but creatine may be a helpful option for women during menopause as a strategy that supports brain and muscle energy. Another consideration for supporting mental clarity and emotional stability are B vitamins. They play a central role in brain and nervous system function, particularly during midlife. Folate, vitamin B2, 6, and B12 are essential for a whole host of reactions involved in DNA repair, methylation, neurotransmitter production, cellular energy metabolism. They also act as cofactors in pathways that convert carbohydrates, fat, and protein into usable energy. So insufficient intake can contribute to fatigue, less mental clarity, and mood changes. And low levels of B vitamins have also been associated with higher levels of homocysteine, which is a marker in your blood that's linked to cognitive decline and cardiovascular risk. Next, I'm going to talk about protein, and I do think that this is one of the most overlooked brain strategies. It rarely gets discussed in conversations about brain fog, but it does play a major role in stabilizing blood sugar and providing necessary amino acids that are required for neurotransmitter production. Protein is definitely having a moment, but I think rightfully so. Many women experience brain fog. They're unintentionally underfueling earlier in the day, especially if their appetite is low or their schedules are busy, and that can lead to midday fatigue, difficulty concentrating, evening cravings, mental overwhelm. And research does show that having higher protein meals, especially earlier in the day, are associated with better attention, reduced mental fatigue, and more stable energy. And this is partly because of protein's impact on blood sugar balance. So including protein at breakfast and across your meals throughout the day can improve focus, reduce cognitive variability, and just help you feel stronger. So these are foundational nutritional aspects. Nothing works in isolation. You want to look at your nutritional strategies when you combine them with consistent lifestyle like sleep, morning light, regular meal times, and especially stress management techniques, these factors influence how effectively these nutrients work and have their own benefits for brain health. For many women in their 40s and beyond, brain fog is less about memory loss and more about mental fatigue, reduced focus, and cognitive overwhelm. Hormonal fluctuations, sleep disruption, increased stress, shifts in blood sugar, they can all influence how efficiently the brain produces and uses energy. And this is why brain fog during perimenopause is often more than one thing. It reflects several small shifts that are occurring at the same time rather than one single underlying problem. When we can address these contributors through lifestyle and nutrition, many women notice more consistent focus, better mental stamina, and less cognitive fatigue throughout the day. Keep in mind that none of these nutrients work in isolation, and it's really important that they're combined and most effective when we also look at lifestyle, sleep, morning light exposure, movement, regular meals, stress management, maybe most importantly. These are all factors that influence how the brain functions. For many women in their 40s and beyond, brain fog is not so much about memory loss, it's more about feeling drained, feeling mentally fatigued, feeling overwhelmed. And hormonal fluctuations, in addition to sleep issues, higher stress, shifts in blood sugar, they all influence how efficiently our brain can produce and use energy. So brain fog during perimenopause is not usually one thing. It's a reflection of several small shifts that are occurring all at the same time. The good news is these contributors, when we address them through lifestyle and nutrition, they can shift, and women notice more improvements in their focus and mental stamina and less cognitive fatigue across the day. So if you've been concerned that these changes mean something is wrong with your brain, it can be helpful to understand that they're almost an accepted part of the menopausal transition. They're so common that we just kind of accept that they're part of the menopausal transition, but that doesn't mean that they should be ignored. It means that we understand them and we understand what needs to be modified. So again, identifying contributing factors and then supporting brain energy is way better than pushing harder or trying to compensate with increased effort. That doesn't always work. If this video helped you better understand what you've been experiencing, consider sharing it with someone who might benefit from the same perspective. And if you're navigating brain fog yourself, I'd be interested to hear what you've noticed, what has helped, what hasn't, and any questions you still have. Thanks for spending this time with me. On behalf of Metagenics, I'm Dr. Melissa Blake. See you in the next video.